Welcome to the Anime Reviewers. I'm Matt.
I'm Zach.
Today we're talking about Jujutsu Kaisen, Episode 9, Small Fry, and Reverse Retribution.
So Small Fry and Reverse Retribution, this episode follows a couple of characters. Starts off introducing us to a new kid, Yoshino Junpei, as he's being bullied and what he sees at the movie theater. It then transfers over to a new Jujutsu sorcerer we're meeting, Nanami Kento, as him and Itadori are investigating the incident at the movie theater. And as they're going through that and sort of as they're at the tail end of sort of that part of it, we then go back over to Yoshino Junpei, where he is actually interacting with the curse that he saw cause the incident, which we learn his name is Mahito.
You were introduced to him in 2 episodes, in episode 7, I think it was?
Briefly, like you saw
see
him. Yeah, you see him briefly. But yeah, overall, it's a very fun episode.
Oh, yeah, there's way too much.
There's way too much, but the first main thing for me is actually Yoshino Junpei's intro. So Yoshino Junpei is a normal high schooler, at least as far as we understand it at this time.
Yeah.
So far, the most interesting thing is that he can in fact see curses. But he's actually getting bullied at the start of the episode and getting picked on or getting beat up because this one girl claims that, oh, he was ogling my breasts. And he's getting picked on and beat up. And I really love his mindset during that, because one of the things he's thinking about is the fact that, like, if he had a button where he could kill everyone he hates, he would not push it. But if he had a button that he could push where everyone that hates him would disappear, he would absolutely press it. And for me, that was a very compelling and interesting mindset. It's very different, like, because we're seeing him interact with Mahito, who as far as we've been led up to believe up till this point, is going to be the major villain antagonist for the show. And in the intro title, or like the intro sequence to the show, you see Itadori and Yoshino sitting next to each other in a like park setting with a bunch of the other characters around, smiling, laughing next to each other. And the fact that he's immediately going to the dark side, or not dark side, I guess but yeah, it's immediately going there. But we have that intro where they're like friendly. I'm excited to see where that goes, and like his mindset there is very intriguing for me and very compelling. And
yeah, what I really liked about the scene is, well, like, just how, like, accurately it depicted bullying. Like, you where on the victim's end, you really understood that, like, he was just mad at being victimized. He wasn't even really resentful at them specifically. Well, that's actually all. He was just mad at the people who were making him victim. He wasn't someone who was just, like, some mindless person who's like a victim, and it's just some series of MacGuffins that's driving him to be this person. Like, you see that's a character trait in him.
Yeah.
And then on, like, the end of the bullies, that's something I also like, that there's just a little bit of depth to where, like, they tell, like, they're just beating him up because they need an excuse to beat him up, but they also, he calls it out where he says they're just beating the girl up, and she's like, she's not just because they think they're going to get some. And then he says she's not that pretty, and then he gets more severely.
Oh, yeah, he had way more severely, but yeah.
But it shows that his attitude, and that was something that was really compelling. And I praise them for accurate bullies for a lot of shows. They're just mindless people.
Yeah, they're
hurt people, and then they just get their comeuppance.
Yeah. Which, I mean, they do get their comeuppance. Yeah, they definitely get their comeuppance.
Which definitely leads to the bet. And my first memorable moment was when they actually show that in the theater, because turns out they were the ones in the theater that got mad, that where the curse attacked, and he happened to be there seeing it because he's talking on the phone, and then he shows up. But then Mahito, thank you, Mahito. He shows up and like pretty much mutilates them. It looks so cool. Like they look like the curses you'll. There later on in the episode, there's other curses. Well, they're kind of curses. You'll understand when you watch the episode. But they have fully explained in this episode, but they just look like them, and when you connect that like later on in the episode, at least I connected it.
Yeah.
I thought it was really like that was like this memorable thing to me was just that he was like really he was getting so mad at them because he's sitting around the phone like anyone would at a movie theater as someone on the phone.
Yeah. So Yoshino's there, like trying to watch the movie, and the three bullies, like one of them's on the phone, and they're talking throughout the whole thing.
And it's to that girl too.
Yeah.
That was the first memorable moment to me was that like that getting the explanation in the theater and just seeing them mutilated.
Yeah.
Then then you get introduced to the new Jujutsu sorcerer Naname Kanto. Like that scene was like that's the next like memorable moment, and like I just really liked his interaction with Itadori, where he's like how he's just very analytical and Itadori is trying to like understand why like he feels like he's not being liked or something, and he's just he's just explaining to him that's not like that he's just introducing his character and all the little dialogue it has. It's funny, it's clever, and you really get to know the character.
Yeah, you definitely do. And you also get to learn a little bit about his motivation and like why he's on Satoru's side. Because like he agrees with Satoru in the fact that the old guard is wrong, but he also does not respect Satoru. Like he's on his side, but it's very clear he doesn't want he wants the old guard gone, but he doesn't want Satoru in charge. And I enjoyed that part of that interaction.
That was just so great to see that, like, he's gathered, like, you see that he's, like, been really playing, like, this political game, but they're not, like, cramming it down your throat, but you're understanding that there's, like, more to it.
Yeah.
And that, like, takes me to the next memorable moment, which is when there's, like, what they think are curses. And he says to Itadori, the Naname says to Itadori that, like, if you need help, just call to me. And then he's like, don't underestimate me. And Itadori says, don't underestimate me. Naname's like, it's not that I'm underestimating you. You're a kid. I'm an adult. I'm obligated to sacrifice myself for you, which to me kind of foreshadows that something bad is probably going to happen to him. He's probably going to sacrifice his life for Itadori.
Yeah, I agree. Like that was a really good interaction, and again, like he explains the motivation why he feels that way because Itadori doesn't have the life experience that he does. It's what it boils down to, and I think it's
and he defines it as that's how you are an adult. It's the difference between an adult and a kid is the experience.
Yeah, and I think it's important to mention the fact that like it's not that he's because he outright said, I can't remember if he outright said it, but he's like it's heavily implied that he's not underestimating. Like he doesn't underestimate Itadori's abilities. It's very clear his concern is the fact that Itadori is a kid. He lacks the life experience to handle certain things, especially the aftermath of certain things.
Yeah, and he says that in a great way of like you've seen some horrible things recently, but that's what an adult is.
Yeah,
seeing all of those things. And then you get just like a little subset to that like memorable moment is you also learn Itadori's name for his special move, the Falcon Punch, which is actually called
Divergent Fist,
which is cool because he basically hits twice. He punches you at his normal power, which is really high, and then cursed energy then fires at him because he punches so much faster than his cursed energy. That he basically hits things twice.
Yeah, it's because
he doesn't have good control of it yet.
Yeah. The rest of their interaction throughout the episode is a lot of fun, but I think for me the next kind of important part for their interaction is sort of towards their tail end of it. Because it's Nanami and Itadori, and they're trying to, like, Nanami setting it up like they're going to go investigate, like, they want to investigate Yoshino and figure out what he knows, because he's, like, Yoshino's on the security camera leaving the movie theater. Whereas Mahito isn't, because Mahito is a curse and doesn't show up on camera. But like he's like, okay, well, I'm gonna send you and this aide we've been seeing for a couple episodes now, to go follow the kid while I gather information about the other stuff. And so Itadori gets all like, okay, starts leaving, and the aide basically calls out Nanami like on his BS. Like the aide clearly knows stuff. Nanami outright says, like, yes, I know where the curse is. Like, I know where their base is. It was what, I forget how he scaled it. Because he weighs the options of, do I go in myself or do I take Itadori? And he's like, well, I just chose the former.
That's something like that really.
I think that part especially plays into the foreshadowing you were talking about earlier. Is the fact that, like, because he knows where the curse is, but he's sending Itadori to do something that's very mundane, and Nanami himself outright says, I don't know, I don't believe that Yoshino really has a part in what happened. And so I think I think that part really cemented for me the foreshadowing you had.
And that's something like I actually would I praise them for is the fact that the adults actually know what's going on. To where often the kids are the ones who are like ahead, like one step ahead of the adults, or they're the ones who actually are passionate enough to go figure out what's wrong.
Yeah.
And the adults often put these kids in deliberately dangerous situations, which is what I commented on in an earlier episode, where they sent the kids in to the
prison.
Yeah, the prison. And it turned out that they were going to kill Itadori. Where in this situation, like, this is actually adults acting like adults really would. Like, I'm not going to take this kid, even though he probably could. So, like, he probably would just call it Sukuna, and Sukuna would Sukuna his way out of it. But they're obviously trying not to let him. They're teaching him.
They're teaching him not to rely on Sukuna.
Yeah, and to use that, and I like how it's adults doing things, and they put the kids in it. This time they put he threw in a dangerous situation, but he has an escort and someone who's teaching him, like basically a Morpheus.
Yeah,
and that's something I thought was that I really praise them for, that they're breaking away from that cliche.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that. I think for me the next memorable moment comes when. We're seeing Yoshino and Mahito actually talk. Because we get a brief glimpse of them, like, talking, like, right after the theater incident. But this is where they're actually properly interacting. And Mahito is sort of explaining what curses are to Yoshino. But we're seeing it from a different, like, this time we're seeing it from the curses perspective, not the Jujutsu sorcerer's perspective. And there's a parallel, like, the parallel that they have, which is really the only time I've seen them, like, when they're doing their explanation, that retread something that's already been said, which is the fact that human fear is what create curses. So from the curse side and Jujutsu sorcerers, they're both correct there. But for Mahito, his thing is the fact that, like, Jujutsu sorcerers started focusing on very specific fears, which they refer to as, it's what the special grades are. It's special grade aberrations, it turns out what they are actually called. Like, Jujutsu sorcerers went hyper-focused there, and Mahito and some of the curses he talks about are sort of more primal or base fears of mankind, because he says that, like, he talks about the fear of the earth, the fear of the forest, and the fear of water. Which I believe is at least two of them we've been introduced to, which is Jogo, which is the guy with the volcano head, and Hanami. And I believe the fear of the earth is supposed to be a reference to Jogo. Fear of the forest is, I believe, meant to be a reference to Hanami, because Hanami controls, like, flowers and stuff. And the fear of water, we've seen it curse near Mahito, which is just, like, floating in the water, and we saw him, like, on the road when they're all talking. We never get his name. He never says anything. Like, it's just there. I think he's supposed to be the fear of water. And Mahito, like, for me, he's he's what I'm really, really excited for, because he is a curse that is a representation of the fear of man. Like, the men's fear of other men, kind of, you know.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited for what that means, because it takes place in, you know, basically present day Japan. Like, the fear of the earth, the fear of the forest, the fear of water isn't as prevalent as it used to be when those curses would have been created. Whereas the fear of man is still highly prevalent. So, and I think it's very important, especially with in regards to, like, Japanese culture, because they're not as isolationist as they used to be, but outsiders are still, like, they're still outsiders. That's how it's seen.
98% of the people who live in Japan are Japanese.
Like, but that's my point. It's like I mean, they don't have as much fear as they used to, but like, there's still that sort of outsiders are outsiders type mentality over there. And I'm really excited for what that means for him, because it tells me, because we're told that if cursed powers come from fear, and the more fear there is, the more power that they have. Like, that tells me he's going to be the main antagonist villain type thing. I suspect he's, power level wise, he's probably going to be comparable to Satoru, at least on some level. Like,
well, but that's where I would disagree. Is I think he's gonna be really powerful, but they clearly say that we have to stop Satoru, like, or we have to say we don't have to kill him. We have to stop it. We have to stop him from being able to influence it.
But I think that's why they want him stopped. Is because he can basically put... If Mahito is their nuke, Satoru is the Jujutsu Sorcerer's nuke. If they go head-to-head, like, they're basically just going to get locked into a fight that, for all intents and purposes, doesn't end. Or it ends in both of them dying. Which doesn't help the curses at all. I think the whole point of removing Satoru is we want to take away the Sorcerer's nuke, but leave ours.
Yeah.
So I think that is what... I think he is supposed to be, like, strength-wise comparable.
Yeah, I can see that. And I'm hoping he's at least one of the main bad guy, or at least, like, in a Star Wars equivalent, like the Darth Vader, to where he's, like, the second most powerful bad guy. And he's going to be, like, one of the main bad guys.
Yeah.
And then that's, like, what leads to the next part of the episode, which is, like, the end of it, which is very memorable. But it's a very small little thing where you see Itadori interact, like, he actually is about to interact with the kid.
They just start following the kid.
Yeah, they just start following the kid, which is, what's his name?
Yoshino.
You see him, and, like, I think that's heavily, in plot, like, it shows that the villains are sticking to their plan. Like,
yeah.
And that's what I like, is because it feels like he's most likely going to be a tool for them to get Itadori on their side.
Yeah.
And you also see, like, the things they have that can compete. Satoru, like, you're seeing that they're all these pieces are moving. You're seeing, it's really cool to see the pieces moving, and it's not just a bunch of, like, word barf or mindless action where
or even just, here's a plot thread.
Yeah.
And then they never talk about it again. Like, so far up till now, every I mean, they do have some plot threads that they haven't covered yet, don't get me wrong. But the vast majority of plot threads that they've laid early, like, we're seeing come into fruition.
Yeah, you're seeing it slowly. And you're seeing, what I really like is it's like watching someone sewing or stitching or something. Like, where you're seeing each little thread and every little mark it's laying when it's used. Like, this show has been great. I think that's pretty much everything we have to say.
Yeah, it's fantastic, and I'm still loving the pacing, and
so
I'm so hyped for what comes next. And one little thing I would like to add, just before we send y'all off here, is the fact that, like, after the credits, this show has been having a habit of doing these little skit things. The skit at the end of this episode is absolutely worth watching. It is so very funny.
Yeah.
Like, the credits ran, both of us were like, no, it's over! And we watched the credits to watch the skit, and we both just died laughing at the end of the skit. It's absolutely hysterical and totally worth watching.
Yeah, and that's something I will do. I think I probably mentioned this before, but the credits are just I love the credits. I mean, it's just a silly little dance thing.
Yeah.
But it's fun. But that's pretty much everything. Thanks for watching.
Have a good one.
Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.
And hit that bell icon for notifications. Also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Links in the description down below.